The premise, too, is that the universe exists contingently. And here's where we get into this discussion about what do we mean by universe? Do we mean our local space-time reality that we inhabit? The thing that is 14.5 billion years old that we can, see the edges of, see the microwave background radiation, that we have a suspicion about how it began. We have Big Bang cosmology, even though there are competing models. This isn't about declaring what version is correct. This is about saying, is the universe contingent? Well, it may be the case that the universe is contingent, but I don't see a demonstration that it is. It may also be the case that if we're talking about the cosmos, the larger everything that our universe exists within or as part of, that the cosmos, in fact, is not contingent, that the cosmos is a necessary thing. We'll get to that in a little bit. The third.
Okay. Before we get into the third thing, what do you think, Josh? Because he's kind of bringing up this idea of like the cosmos being potentially necessary again.
I think it is a very interesting kind of discussion. And I think, first of all, we have to say, well, what exactly does Matt mean when he says demonstrate the universe is contingent? Because that, of course, goes back to our previous discussion about the epistemology surrounding contingency. How exactly do we know that something is contingent, apart from just saying, well, it's quite obvious that this thing is contingent? And I think that one of the ways I could build on it, or we could build on it, is kind of like physical or natural things are most likely contingent. And of course, I think this could be developed to be more precise in the argument from limits, which Zach knows way more than I do. But essentially, physical, it's like kind of things like physical things like chairs, people, basically anything physical are quite clearly contingent, whereas things which are non-physical, like math, logical space, are mainly necessary. So as a result, the universe being a physical thing is most likely to be contingent. And furthermore, the universe could be otherwise. And of course, you might say I'm kind of equivocating or mixing up the idea of something being possible and something being contingent. Though I think that there's some connection between something being possible and something being contingent, which we can perhaps discuss somewhere else. But I think that there's just generally quite clearly a bit of a similarity over there. And finally, it doesn't seem logically impossible that the universe has different laws. It doesn't seem impossible that the universe could have been otherwise, in the same sense that it seems impossible for 1 + 1 to equal to 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because like Matt always throws around the word demonstration, and I don't always know what he means. Like, of course, we can't demonstrate the universe is contingent, like our models of the Big Bang break down. But I mean, it still doesn't stop us from like trying to understand things. And then, so he brings up the cosmos, and I've been thinking, like, I just don't even know what he means by the cosmos. Like, he's gonna say like the foundation, like, but that's kind of like just like a tautology. So it's like all of whatever the foundation is. I just don't really know what he means by the cosmos. So that's a little tricky to think about. But then thinking about the limits thing. So like we obviously know that like you and I and Matt and dogs and trees are contingent. And why is that? Well, they have certain features, like they're maybe alive, or they weigh a certain amount of weight, or things like that. And then I wonder about the cosmos, and it's like, well, what does that mean? But let's just say it's like some sort of like matter energy or like a quantum field or something. And it's like, well, it seems like we're going to still have these limits where seems like things could have been otherwise, but they're this way. And that's just kind of like the brute fact of the foundation. And it's like, okay, well, I guess we just stop there. Like if atheism is true, like it just doesn't seem like, it seems like there's further explanation still and we can go further. So I just don't really see, it seems like we can go further. That's just why I don't really think the cosmos would be necessary. But obviously Matt would have to define it, because if we just say the cosmos is that which is the foundation, well then like, sure, I can agree. And I'm going to say that is God. So, it's just tricky. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with that. I think that the argument from limits is definitely fascinating. And just before we move on, I perhaps could say a bit about what writer John Buck says with I more have in mind that I can conceive of a world without God in it. I think that conceiving of a world without God in it is something very interesting. And I think, though I do definitely think that a world without God is kind of something which kind of similar to a question of what happens before time. It's one of those things which apparently seems to work like something conceptually, kind of like just saying, well, I could conceive of the sky being red. Whereas in reality, it's more of something like a square circle, but just hidden under more normal or more common terminology. Because if we think about the contingency argument, and let's assume that the contingency argument works, well, then you can clearly demonstrate that, well, there is no world which could possibly exist without a necessary foundation behind it. And there's also other ways which these things can be formulated, such that, well, maybe the idea of conceiving a world without God in it is not as intuitively possible as it just seems at face value. And that's something we can think about perhaps on the side.
Mm-hmm.